Well, hello! Today we're going to be changing it up a little bit, and we are bringing on the amazing Kellyn Roth. So, Kellyn is a historical romance writer and a women's fiction author, and she has over 10 books in print. So, as an indie publishing author herself, Kellyn is really passionate about helping other indie writers, and so we're going to talk a little bit about indie publishing today, about some details, some tips, and yeah, let's get started. So, the first question that I wanted to ask was just, how did you get into writing? Before we get into all the indie publishing stuff, how did you get into writing?
I don't really know is the honest answer to that. I started writing when I was probably 7 years old, and I think that the main reason is because my mother and older sisters were very willing to write things down that I said. So they just kind of like, so I've got stuff and it's like, why would anyone record this for future generations? This is not needed. They kind of gave me this unrealistic confidence that what I wrote or said was very good. And so I just kept writing, and probably when I was 10 or 11, a bunch of my friends and I kind of got together and started sending little snippets of our books back and forth. And when we did that, it really inspired me to keep writing, and then they all quit and left me alone, and I just continued writing. And I still send them book snippets, and it annoys the heck out of them. So I think what happened is that I was, 15, and I didn't know a thing. I didn't know, even how one would go about any kind of publishing. I just kind of did it. I think I started a blog in September, and then I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this in January. I'm going to do my best. I think I had maybe 3 followers on my blog. It was like that. It wasn't wise, but it sure taught me a lot. And I went for it. And from then on, it was just a ton of learning and retracing my steps and figuring out where I went wrong and figuring out where I went right. And yeah, it was just all a giant journey of self-discovery, for better or for worse. But it was a lot of fun.
So, do you have any tips for somebody who is interested in the indie publishing process but doesn't exactly know where to start? They don't have a huge following, or they're just interested in the idea of getting their books out to other people, but they just don't know where to start. Do you have any tips for those type of people?
So, what I would say is reach out to indie authors. They're usually not scary. I'm not scary, at least I don't think so. And I would really like to just have someone send me a bunch of questions, and I'll do my best to answer them as I have time. Another thing you can do is if you're on social media, like if you're on Facebook, for instance, I would join some groups, some indie author groups. Like I know one that's called Queen Indie Reads, will answer questions for you. There's dozens of others. And I would just, kind of search around for indie groups. You could even specifically look for ones in your genre. And join them and talk to people and see what they're doing. The main thing is just don't let yourself jump into it. I know it's tempting, like it's easy to create an account on a indie publishing service and just slap a book up there, but there's more to it than that. And once you know that, you can be like, well, there I've got to have this certain amount of education on the subject before I dive in. My main tip would just be to reach out to other indie authors, join groups. I know there's some great options out there for education if you really want to look into it.
So, like, your big thing is just not to just slap your book up there, because it feels like the right thing to do if you want to just get your book out and you want to share it with people, to just throw it up on Amazon, because it's kind of simple. It's simple enough that anyone can really do it. And that's probably why indie publishing kind of gets a bad rap at times, because anyone can do it, and so the books usually are full of typos, or there can be problems with indie books just because they're not kept to a same level. So what would you say your process specifically, because your books are not full of typos. I am almost done with reading the book that you wrote, and it's really good. It's not what you would say is like the consistent of indie publishing. Like it's not bad. That sounds so wrong, but like it's not bad, and it's indie published. So like, what would you say your process with getting the book indie published is?
First of all, it's important to have editors. And at first, your editors may just say to you, when you're a very beginning writer and you've only written a project or 2 projects, they may say, there are a lot of errors in this, and it needs to go back a couple drafts. When you have been writing for a little while, I don't have that so much, but I do have, I try to get at least feedback from 3 or 4 people before I even get it to the publishing stage. Well, oftentimes, actually, I will have just friends or, other readers in my genre who will go through and read it as like alpha or beta readers. But in terms of professional editing, I always make sure to hire both a line and a copy editor. So someone who goes by line, does all the edits on kind of all the sentences and stuff because my prose can need some polishing. And then someone who goes and catches all my errors and also kind of trims out my historical inaccuracies because I have this tendency to use words that were not invented until the 1930s in a book that is supposed to be set in like 1880 something. And that's a problem. Some people actually catch those. I wouldn't have. So yeah, it's about those editors and then for every part of the process, you want to hire a professional or be a professional yourself. Like I can do the interior formatting myself usually, but I do need a cover designer because I'm not a graphic design person to that level. I can do like a Canva graphic for Instagram, but there's no way I'm going to be sitting down and figuring out all the marketing aspects of a cover because, a cover is the main way that you're going to sell your book. It needs to be professional, it needs to be on brand, it needs to represent your genre well, it needs to represent your story well. I'm not that talented. So hire out when you can't do it. And editing is definitely a part of the process that is challenging for me. And different kinds of writers hire different kinds of editors. Some are going to be more focused on a developmental editor because they find that getting the actual big story elements in place is the problem. The prose themselves they can polish, but getting the big pieces in place is hard.
Yeah, it just feels like since it's just self-publishing, it's just you, that you can just do it yourself. But it does involve a team. Like it's different from traditional publishing, but it also, you still need that team behind you because as the writer, you are a good writer. But that doesn't mean that you're amazing with prose and you can do everything. So yeah, I think it's important to remember, especially with indie publishing, that it's not all only on your shoulders. So do you have any tips for people that are trying to get indie published and they want to follow this process and they don't want to just do it themselves, for finding people to help, like finding editors and finding those type of people?
Yeah, so if you're looking for a really good editor or a really good cover designer, you just kind of need to shop around. If you're on social media again, or if you just have author friends, wherever you are, reach out to other authors, other indie authors. Say, hey, who did your cover? Sometimes you can even peek into the acknowledgments, and they'll have. I always have my editors and my cover designer listed in my either my acknowledgments and usually the copyright page too, actually. So if you don't have to buy the book, just pull it up on Amazon, scroll down to the copyright page, and a lot of times they will put the cover designer and editors in there. But you can also just ask because no one's going to be like, I'm going to be super secretive about who did my cover and my edits. Why would you do that? That's so nonsensical. In fact, it's kind of a mark to their benefit. They did actually go to the effort of having someone professional do these things. A lot of it is just kind of keeping an eye out, but then also don't be afraid to ask for recommendations. I'll always recommend my editors or others. And I know that most indie authors or authors in general will.
Yeah, it's not a secret. Sometimes it does feel like those sort of things are secrets because it's just not put out there, but it's not because they're hiding it. Just, I don't know, it doesn't come up in conversation naturally. So do you have any specific tips for indie publishing, for the marketing side of it? So you went through the whole stage, you got editors, you've looked through the book, you feel like you got it to the top place that it can be. Do you have any tips for actually putting it out there and getting it into people's hands?
So in terms of just marketing in general, the biggest thing you gotta remember is it's all about blessing people. It's all about choosing to selflessly, with no expectation of return, to bless people, to reach out and, just be there for your readers. And this can look different for every different author. Like for me, I'm starting to realize that what I want to do is kind of latch onto certain themes, and then post about those themes on my Instagram, on my blog, just everywhere that I post things and share about these things in a way that I hope will bless people. And then also, of course, be responsive when people, reply to comments, when they send me messages and, continue to interact with them and hopefully, offer whatever comfort, inspiration, etc. I can through what God has called me to speak about. And for different authors, it will be different things. Some people really focus on more of a nonfiction approach where they're kind of more speaking to the indie audience or the writer audience and kind of giving them tips and all that kind of stuff. The main aspect there is just to, help other people, help other authors with their launches. And you want to be doing this, of course, long before you're publishing a novel, but if you don't, you can still do it now, even if you have 5 novels out or however many novels. I've got 10. I need to still be doing that. Once you get past that, when you're actually trying to launch your book and you need something okay, but I can't just be blessing people and seeing what happens. Once you get to that stage, hopefully you'll have some people, maybe not all of the people, but some of the people will be like, hey, I remember Kellyn. She helped me with X, Y, and Z now that she has a book launch and is reaching out to me. And, it always helps to reach out individually and saying, hey, would you be willing to share this to your Instagram story, etc. Hopefully that they'll feel, maybe they want to do that too. And they won't always. And everyone's at a different level of busyness. and not everyone is going to turn around and, bless you back. And they shouldn't, because how character growing would that be if you just had like an instant return? That's no fun. You wouldn't learn at all. Because the good thing about being an author is it's also supposed to build your character, like everything in life. I just say bless people, but then also know that when you get to that point, you should be able to reach out to people and you should be able to ask them to help promote your book. And it's going to be a lot of legwork at first because not everyone's just going to hop on and fill out your cover reveal form or whatever it is. So at the start, especially, it's individual connection. With people who you care about and you've invested in. Once you have that core audience, it's really helpful just to build from there and know that, well, you'll do your best with everyone who comes in, but there's also got to be this kind of a core audience who are the people you're writing for. So yeah, if that makes sense, that's kind of where I'd recommend starting. Oh, and from a practical side, if you can get an email list started, that's really wise. I didn't get my email list started, and I still hate email lists, but it's so important, so we've got to do it, even if it's not fun. So get your email list built, I guess.
That should be a good motto just to put up. Get your email list built, even if it's not fun.
Yes, exactly.
So it's just all about building connections, really, which is a good thing to learn how to do, and it's something really important to know how to do, whether you're indie publishing or traditionally publishing. It's really just all about building those connections. So on the topic of indie books, will you tell us a little bit about the book that you just launched?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a adult Christian historical romance. So it's a story about my character, Cassie, and another character named Patrick, and they just basically get in all kinds of really tame adventures because it's historical romance and nothing exciting really happens. So they get in adventures along the lines of, oh no, we've met each other on a boat, and now we have to deal with being awkward around each other because we don't really want to be together, but we kind of want to be together. It's that kind of a great adventure, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like writing a mix of like a BBC drama and then throw in a little Jane Austen, then you kind of just mix it all up together and you insist that it talks about things that are difficult because I refuse to let my books do otherwise. So I wrote it kind of for a 16 plus ish audience just because there are some topics in it that are discussed that are a little on the more difficult side. And I think I wrote up a tagline like along the lines of, I don't know, something cheesy, like, oh yeah, she wants nothing more than a home and a family of her own, but not at the cost of her convictions. That's really great. Basically, my book is out, and you might enjoy it if you like kind of historical pieces. So it's on Amazon, and that's the main way you'd be able to get it. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and you can also purchase a copy, ebook, or paperback for now until I figure out my audiobook stuff. So that's where you can get it.
So to close out, how can people find you online, and then where can they keep up with you at?
I have a blog and I have a website, and that's KellynRothAuthor.com. You can also find it if you just type in KellynRoth.com because I bought all the domains, but then insisted that the Kellyn Roth author was the main one. So the main places you'll find me are on Instagram, and then I have my newsletter set up, my boring newsletter that I have to maintain for some reason, that I keep meaning to reboot more than I have, but oh well. Anyway, and you can subscribe to that on my website if you're interested in doing that. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, I enjoy following you on Instagram. Your stories always make me laugh when you get up there and you're just ranting about random things. It makes me laugh.
Favorite thing to do.
Oh, it's my favorite thing to watch. They're very fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a blast to get to talk to you, and I hope that people will order your new book and that they'll just gain some insight and some helpful tips from what you discussed today. So thank you so much for coming on, Kellyn.